Welcome to Surviving Roots, the podcast where we navigate the messy, beautiful work of healing and growth. I'm your host, Cari Fund, and this is your space to breathe, reflect, and find strength. Whether you're breaking free from old patterns, healing from loss, or rebuilding your story one small step at a time, you're in the right place. So take a deep breath, give yourself this time, and let's uncover the tools to move forward with courage. This podcast is for you. Today on Surviving Roots, I'm sitting down with someone I've been so looking forward to having on, Dr. Sylvia. She's a trauma-informed therapist, speaker, and the host of the Dr. Sylvia K Show, with over 20 years of clinical work behind her. And she just did the thing. Her brand new book, Lonely AF, A Therapist's No BS Guide to Feeling Less Alone, is out in the world. Sylvia, first, congratulations on your book.
Thank you.
It's so amazing. I can't wait to talk about it.
Thank you.
It is, a book is no small thing. And this one is so honest, it almost dares you to look away at times. But I also hear that life looks a little different for you these days. No more Miami. Geneva, the lake, the Alps. I mean, let's talk about this first before we get into anything. How is Switzerland treating you?
Okay, Switzerland is absolutely beautiful, but I need to be honest because that's my style. The first year was lonely AF. I hated it. I came back to Miami, I think after being there for 6 weeks, and I was crying. I was like, I can't do it. I want to come back because Miami has always felt like home.
Okay.
The second year, I just said, I need to discover Switzerland through my eyes. So I went to bookstores. I put myself out there and asked people to, meet me for a coffee. Got into, the mountains. I think the mountains were my saving grace because it helped ground me. And there's this one special place called Cromontana. Mm-hmm. And I call it my Miami of Switzerland because it's south facing. I get sun. So I said, okay, if I can go here at least, every other weekend or something, I'll stay. But now I've found my groove. I've met some incredible people, and just Switzerland is just one of those places where I think not only do you connect to nature, but I think when you kind of get stripped away from all familiar things, you discover parts of yourself that you probably wouldn't have discovered if you stayed put.
Yeah.
So I'm super grateful. But every time I come back to Miami, I'm like, I want.
I mean, Miami looks good on you. I have to tell you, since you've arrived,
you.
I've been watching your stories on social media, and I'm like, damn, I need to move to Switzerland because I don't go running. You're like running all over Miami and like enjoying the sand. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't even know the last time I put my feet in the sand or even took a run. Like mountains, train rides, making chocolate. Like, I think I need to move.
We'll have some fondue together.
Oh my God, I think I need to move to Switzerland.
Okay. Or at least come visit me and I'll show you the
100%. It sounds like a dream. Okay, so this podcast is called Surviving Roots, and I open every conversation the same way, and I mean it every time. What is something that you have survived or are surviving?
Okay, so many things. The first thing that came to me was instinctively just like mother loss and all shapes and form of early mother loss. I think it's something that has always marked my identity, and I'm working through and kind of trying to unstrip of some of that, I would say like abandonment complex that I attach to that identity. And I'm trying to work through that mother loss where I'm finding mother again, whether it's spiritually through my own mom or finding new parts of myself. But I think losing my mom at 2 years old definitely was difficult with the whole like attachment, thing and not being able to really talk about my mom. It wasn't something that my father was open to. So that kind of unprocessed, unrecognized grief that I didn't realize was there until 25. I'm 47, and I'm still discovering parts of that unspoken grief or unrecognized grief. So yeah, I'm still surviving mother loss in various forms.
Thank you for sharing that. It's beautiful that you said that, because one of the questions that I wanted to ask you when I read your dedication, you mentioned your mother, and I wanted to ask you about that. So you say this book carries the voice you were never given the chance to speak because you lost her so young. What does it mean to you to carry a voice for someone you didn't get the years with?
Yes. Oh, it means so many things. I felt myself wanting to cry. I think first the grief was unspoken, not being able to talk about her, not being able to recognize her. Anytime as a child, I would bring, the idea of my mom up. I miss her. Tell me about mom. My dad would be like, he would kind of choke up and he would say, it's difficult. Sorry, I do a Polish accent. It's like Polish Russian. I'm like, it's difficult for me to talk about, or he would get into this narrative of how hard it was for him. So it would always, as a classic narcissist does, right? Yeah. He would always be redirected to his pain, to his story. And so first just honoring her and saying, okay, I'm giving her a voice, just talking about her. But I think especially in their relationship, I talk about it in the book, I think there were a lot of things that she wasn't able to speak up for herself. Mm-hmm. And I also think just in terms of generational healing, I think her, my grandmother, my great-grandmother, there were a lot of things that they weren't able to speak up for or share. And so I feel like this book really is a form of generational healing, is to give a voice to women that couldn't use their own voice in the way that they could. I just a little bit of context in the book. My grandmother tried to kidnap my brother and I and take us back to Poland. And when my father interceded and brought us back to Texas, my grandmother then took my mom to Poland and she died like 4 months later. But we never got to speak to my grandmother again until maybe I was like 16. But I never got to say goodbye to my mom. I never got to speak to my mom. So there's also just that recognition of what I couldn't say, but really just like, thank you for the sacrifices that you made. Mm-hmm. She left Poland with my dad. She came to the US at a young age, at 28. She gave so much up for this idea of providing a better future for her kids. But I think it's not just her voice. I think it's also recognizing what I've been able to do because of her sacrifices and where I am today, mm-hmm. And what I've been able to do. And so, yeah, just recognizing her presence in the book. But now I'm just learning how to do it more often. Before I never even really thought about her. And so that's just, again, recognizing her voice, but also recognizing her presence and her contribution.
That's so beautiful and so well said. And to write this book, I can only imagine all of the stages of healing and grief and the ups and downs, the emotional roller coaster it takes to write this book. How does it feel that it's out in the world?
It feels liberating. It feels scary. And also it feels still unbelievable when people say, oh, I read your book. It really touched me. Thank mm-hmm. you. Or, oh, this chapter really meant a lot to me. Or even if they haven't read it, I bought the book. I'm like, really? You did? Especially when they read it, because, people buy books, but a lot of people don't actually read them. So when they say they read it, I'm like, you did? You actually read it? So it feels like a gift to be able to share information that I was privileged to learn mm-hmm. as, a therapist with a PhD. I think only 1% of our population actually is able to get a PhD. So I feel like it's just a part of me giving back, sharing information that I learned that's not so accessible to people. And also just to give language to feelings that people have that they don't know how to put into words, or to just help people feel less alone. Sometimes, especially anyone who's experienced significant trauma or loss or grief, sometimes in that trauma, you think you're the only one who went through it. Yeah. Or you feel so alone, like you can't really talk to anybody about it because of the shame. And then people like you and I who are openly talking about really difficult topics, narcissistic parents, abandonment, not having our, emotional needs met. And giving a voice to something that so many people have experienced, I feel like is an act of giving back, but it's an act of sharing. Yeah. And so it feels like a true gift to kind of be on this wave of giving language to something that feels really difficult to talk about.
It's so interesting. I want to really dive into the book, but speaking of something like in terms of loneliness, it's amazing to me that I've connected to so many amazing women like yourself through talking about all the things that shame kept me silent for decades. So I think to myself at 48, wow, imagine if 21-year-old Cari would have just opened her mouth instead of being silent and keeping shame and bearing all of this. I opened my mouth because I have truly connected to the most amazing people in the last 5 years just by talking about the very things I hid from. Make it make sense.
I know. It's mysterious. It's phenomenal. It's mind-blowing. Well, I mean, the same thing. I'm like, I never imagined talking about loneliness would help me feel so connected to so many people. I've met the most amazing people in the world, but particularly New York, now Miami, California, but through talking about something that is so isolating or people don't want to talk about. So make it make sense. How do we feel more connected talking about loneliness?
Well, I want to ground everyone that's listening because I really want you to define what loneliness is.
Yes. Okay. Well, the academics say loneliness really, it's subjective. So it's a person's, I would say, the ratio of how much connection they want with humans versus how much they're actually getting. So if you're a person that needs more deep connection, more meaningful conversations with people, and you're not getting that, and you're just having surface level conversations, that would qualify as loneliness. But if you're a person that is more introverted and you just need that one friend and you don't need a lot of, social contact, you're not going to feel lonely because it's at the ratio that you need. But for me, on a deeper level, especially emotional loneliness, I think you can be in a room full of people. You can be successful. You could be a successful author, an entrepreneur, businessman, businesswoman, making lots of money. You have family of all the material wants you need. And you can feel so lonely inside. And so it doesn't really, I think, depend on how much people you have around you. I think it's really about how comfortable do you really feel being yourself?
Yeah.
How connected to yourself do you really feel? And do you have one or two friends or a family member that you feel that you could totally be yourself with? And many of us don't. I know for me, when I started to write the book proposal of this book, my book coach was saying, just be yourself. And I was like, what the fuck does that mean? I've been a chameleon my whole life.
Yeah.
What version of myself?
Yeah, which one do I need to?
And so I, even as a therapist, to be completely vulnerable, honest, and transparent, I was like, I don't really know what it means to be myself. And it was through writing the book, and it was through doing the tools, and then really kind of like peeling back the layers of my own story and learning how to reframe it. I was like, oh, so I feel like I'm just now at 47 discovering who I am. I was calling my friend, I was like, something about turning 50. It's like you don't care as much,
don't care, right?
about what other people think. But I think there's this sense of freedom and like curiosity. And like you said, you get to a place where your relationship to shame, you have an opportunity to shift your relationship to shame.
Yeah.
So that's where I am right now, just kind of discovering like who I am. And so going back to your question about loneliness, I think it's when you feel comfortable enough to be yourself or have the freedom, to discover who you are, and you feel that you can share that with one or two people, then I feel like that is connection. But a lot of us don't. And so when we're not able to be our true selves, or we don't know who that person is, that can lead to this kind of long or unending, experience of loneliness, of feeling a bit lost, or feeling like you're just wearing this mask or playing this role that doesn't feel authentic.
Yeah. I felt so seen by this book. Exactly what you just said. My entire childhood and upbringing growing up, I felt so alone. And then when I moved to New York City in my 20s, for over a decade, I was working 78 hours a week. I was going to fabulous parties. I was invited to these fashion shows, this and that. I was so busy. Looking outside at my life, you would have thought, wow, what a dream. And I was so lonely, so miserable, because I wasn't connected to myself. I had no idea who I was. I was still people pleasing and suffering from eating disorders and dealing with both toxic parents. And I was going through all these motions, I think numbing with keeping myself busy.
Yes.
And I had never, I think I was lonely up and probably until I was 31 and I met my now husband. But I learned to lean into like one person, and then became estranged, and then started really getting to know myself and having that space to hear myself and to heal. And I am that person now where I have like 3 people in my life and like I'm good. Like it's quality over quantity.
Yeah. I used to live in Los Angeles, and that was one of the places that I felt the most lonely. So I'd broken off an engagement. I'd been with my first boyfriend for almost 8 years. We were going to get married. So I broke that off. And then here I was in LA. I felt like, okay, I'm going to now live my 20s as like a single person. I was at all the Burning Man parties. I was at all the cool DJ places in Venice. I was dating the DJ. I had friends that were, in the industry. I just was at all the coolest parties. And I've never felt so lonely, because I felt at that time everyone was so kind of like into themselves. Like, oh, I'm working on my screenplay, or, I'm putting my DJ set together. We all looked, we played the cool kid role. But I didn't feel that we were really connecting or being vulnerable. And I remember feeling so lonely. And that's when I wanted to move back to Miami, because I remember my experience of Miami was more of this like Latin, familiar, like family kind of oriented place. And I remember wanting to do that. But one other thing I wanted to add is I think a part of my loneliness was being the golden child for a narcissistic parent. And not knowing that I was involved with sibling rivalry for so long and that, plotting against each other and then the competition for our father's attention, etc. It didn't hit me until I was 41 when my dad acted like a complete asshole at my wedding in Italy. And then it just kind of, the curtain and Wizard of Oz like open and I see him and I'm like, wait, that's who you've been my whole life? And then I was like, but who have I been this whole time? And I realized that was a contributing role to my own loneliness, was trying to, basically I was just always trying to get him to pay attention to me or to notice or to be proud of me. And it never felt like it was enough. But in that striving and begging, not for his attention, but for that, I think, real connection didn't happen. And there was that, I think, if I could say, just like this constant striving that always left me feeling so empty. And I think that's what really left to that loneliness. It's like, no matter what kind of, part of the chameleon I was playing, it wasn't leading me to some sense of like safe connection or a feeling of being seen.
Yeah. It really leads you to nowhere.
Nowhere.
You're just, it's like you're playing in a movie that's supposed to be your life. And, which costume and which mask are you putting on today?
Yeah. And I won't give the complete details, but my dad did something that was pretty unforgivable at my wedding. And it was that shock of what he said. And I just said, this is not my story anymore.
Yeah.
I remember looking at him. It was never my story. And I just had this out-of-body experience. And my husband was sleeping upstairs. We were in a hotel and he was upstairs with our 4-year-old son. I was like, that's my story upstairs. And I'm still in the middle or in the beginning of creating what my story is. And I remember making that point. It was like, I'm no longer going to be his golden child. I'm no longer going to be, his therapist or his best friend or whoever he needs me to be. I'm going to go figure out who I am and I'm going to go create my story.
Yeah.
And that really, I think, was the beginning of me feeling less lonely.
I love that you're sharing that because it takes a while for some of us to get it. But one thing I always like to remind people in my community or this community in space is that you're just a choice away from the life that you want. And it can be the smallest choices, but the choice to know that you are worthy of peace and joy and finding out who you are and who you want to be in the world. Like, it's just a choice. I don't know. We lose so much of our power by giving it to people that no matter what we do, no matter what costume we wear, what mask we put on, they're never going to be happy. They're never going to be satisfied. But it's like choosing to realize that you really have the power to create the life that you dream of, how you want to feel, how you want to show up in the world. But it's a tough choice to make.
Absolutely.
But once you do, it's so fun. I always imagine these doors, like you walk through a door and the one closes behind you and it locks and you can't go back. Like, don't even look back. Don't even try to open it. Just keep moving through like all the fear stuff. Just keep going.
Yeah. And there is grief that comes with it because you kind of, I think our nervous systems got so conditioned to those roles that we played. Yeah. And then there's almost a part of you that's like, wait, I'm not going to be in that dynamic. I know I don't miss it, but something's different. And so I think there is a bit of like a little a nervous system reset, but there is some grief because there's a bit of a loss, but there is so much waiting to be gained when you do make that choice.
Yeah. Well, this book cracked so much open in me. It was like heart melting, and it was like a punch in the heart and a heart hug at the same time. It was beautiful. And speaking of heart, I want to talk about this heart method because it is the spine of the book.
Yes.
For someone hearing it for the first time, what is it and how is it different from just going and being more social?
Okay. Yes, absolutely. So the 5-step heart method, I think, is accumulation of everything that I've studied in my PhD program, but along the way in my master's and even in my, I would say, new agey, paths that I've journeyed on along the way. So heart is a 5-step method to work through particularly emotional loneliness. And so H stands for honor your emotions. E stands for explore your family patterns. A stands for acknowledge your pain points. R stands for rewrite your narrative. And T stands for turn within. Turn within to regulate your own nervous system because that's where true connection begins. But also turn within to create a toolbox for you to help you through those moments that can be really sometimes overwhelming. And so for honoring your emotions, a lot of us don't even know how to name our emotions. I know sometimes I get DMs in my Instagram saying, thank you for putting into words what I was feeling. And something as simple as naming an emotion. This is anxiety.
Yeah.
This is anger. This is frustration. That's a way of self-validating ourselves. But again, many of us were raised in environments where that wasn't modeled, that wasn't taught. Even maybe if you did, or it was shown, maybe it was shown in a way that it was considered or framed as selfish or demanding or too much or whatever it is. Especially culturally too. I think there's certain cultures that might pride themselves of like, pull yourself by, the bootstraps, boys don't cry, etc. So honoring your emotions is it starts as simple as just naming it. Explore your family system. I think so many of us don't recognize how much we are carrying from our ancestors. Epigenetics shows that we carry at least 3 generations back of coding, literal coding that sets us up for survival.
Wow. I'm exhausted just hearing that.
So we're not really aware of that.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
No wonder my shoulders, I have terrible posture. Jeez.
It's
3 generations?
At least
I've just been focusing on the one.
Well, they did this quick study just to prove it. So they had these, I think, mice exposed to this cherry blossom scent. So let's imagine Grandpa Mouse. He was eating his little pellets. They were giving him water, and when the scientists distributed the food pellet, they would spray cherry blossom like a scent. He'd get the pellet, then he'd eat. Well, then later, when they released the smell of the cherry blossom, they'd electrocute him, and so he'd tense up. So mice reproduce quickly. So then let's say the son of the mouse, when he would get the pellet, he'd eat it. But as soon as they sprayed the cherry blossom scent, he would tighten up.
Really?
And he wasn't electrocuted. His body had already memorized the survival instinct. When you smell that smell, you tighten up because something painful is about to happen.
Yeah.
And then when the son of the grandfather mouse had children, they also responded in the same way. As soon as they were exposed to the cherry blossom scent, without even being electrocuted, their muscles would tighten up quickly. So we carry preferences, medical history, trauma, etc. in our DNA. And I believe now, where we are in this time of age, 2026, but let's say like the end of the X generation and the millennials, we are, I think, the first time in history, people who are generational cycle breakers, but who are also privy to tools to help work with some of these generational patterns that we didn't have a language for, or even, let's say, the context to really recognize, because before maybe there was a Great Depression or World War II. It's like, we don't have time to unpack our feelings. We need to stay strong, suppress, our emotions, and we need to survive. So I think when you explore your family system and you do a genealogram, you can look at relational patterns. You can find certain ways of survival that in your family system that helped. And it's not to blame our parents. It's not to blame our grandparents or, our ancestors. It's to actually honor them. What they did to survive, maybe it wasn't the best way, but they survived. It's also to give context to say, okay, they needed this because this is what was happening, or, this is what was modeled. And so by honoring those patterns, and you're placed in a position of choice, as you said earlier, and you say, okay, which one of these patterns do I want to continue? Which one of these patterns do I want to break? And so again, it's not to blame, it's to honor, but also just see a bigger picture. This didn't start with you. You're carrying a lot of invisible, unseen patterns. And then when you move into the acknowledgement of your pain points, that's where I want people to recognize in our family patterns and in these survival strategies, most of us develop some kind of narrative to make sense of whatever that insecurity was that we either inherited or that we just developed in response to our environment. So one of my pain points is, which is a universal one, not feeling good enough. But particularly mine is, you don't care, or I'm not important. I felt that, with my father, always busy, but his narcissistic traits was kind of always about him. I was so hungry for him just to see me. And his life choices, he moved to Kazakhstan. He didn't take me. I ended up living alone my junior and senior of high school. So I felt like you didn't care about me. I wasn't important enough. That pain point still affects my relationships today. But when you can look at the pain point, that gives you a starting point to say, well, okay, if this was my problematic story, what's my preferred story? Do I prefer to think I'm not good enough? No. What do I prefer to feel or think? I am good enough. So we can't just take away the self-limiting beliefs. You can't get rid of your pain points. None of us can get rid of them. But the more that you acknowledge them and you recognize them, you take more accountability and responsibility for them. So when you get triggered in your relationship, you're like, oh yeah, that's my pain point, instead of blaming and projecting the person. And how does this tie into loneliness? Well, when you're starting to recognize your own pain point and you can validate it, you don't have to make someone else the victim or the bad guy or project. Like, you turn to yourself, you recognize, you start that healing process. But I think if you can say the unlonely, that's the word, the disarming of the loneliness is like, okay, I do have the power to rewrite this narrative. And so you go from the acknowledgement of the pain point to the rewrite. What is your preferred story? What are the choices that you could make to create a whole different future for yourself, to change maybe the role that you've been playing for so long? I've played a victim, in my own narrative. Oh, my mother died when I was young. I was abandoned. My dad left. I've played an orphan. I've played kind of like the damsel in distress. And it got me into relationships and situations in my life where I just kept recreating that very limiting role.
Yeah.
So now I'm in that process of, I do want to rewrite it. I'm not that abandoned child. I'm not that damsel in distress. I do have power to write a book, to connect with people, to honor my mother's voice. I don't need my father's praise, which I'm still sometimes trying to get, but whatever. It's little girl inside of me.
Work in progress.
But, I just feel like finally for the first time, okay, I can really metaphorically put the pen in my hand and rewrite a narrative that is more in alignment with who I want to be or who I always was and just didn't maybe have the environment to be. And then turning within, whether it's breath work or journal prompts or, any kind of like somatic nervous system regulation exercise. I think it's those little small action steps that create the connection. You don't need this big grandiose thing to connect with yourself. You don't even have to journal. You don't even have to read the book. You can just simply, right now we can do it together. We're just going to take a moment and we're going to pay attention to the next inhale that we take in through our nose. And as you exhale, just notice what happens to your shoulders and see if you can just slow down the breath a little bit more. Slower inhale in through your nose and exhale out. Just notice what happens to your shoulders and then gently open your eyes. It's like connecting, remembering. That's what mindfulness is about. Sati, remembering just that little breath. Remembering that energy inside of you that's beyond all this persona stuff. And so, that's the heart method. And I think on a deeper level, you're connecting to yourself beyond all these narratives, beyond all the stories, beyond all the content and even the history, and connecting to a part of you that is so infinitely powerful and beautiful. And my wish and hope is that everyone is able to just for a second connect to that invisible energy inside of them that often gets ignored.
Yeah. So well said. So well said. And the little exercise we just did, you could do that at any moment throughout the day.
Yeah.
Any moment. Yeah. It's free. It takes less than a minute.
Yeah.
And
for those who hate breathing, because I do have a lot of clients who are like, don't make me breathe. Something as simple as go ahead and notice 3 colors around the room, Cari, and name the colors out loud.
Green and orange.
Okay. Name 3 objects that you see.
Book or glasses.
Now listen to 3 sounds and name them as you hear them.
Mike.
Okay. Now wiggle your left toe. So funny. It's my funnest one. Yeah. You're like, okay. Well.
Okay.
All right. And now go back to the breath and just listen to the sound of your next breath. So what do you notice now in your body that's different from when we started the podcast?
I mean, my shoulders are definitely they're lower and I feel heavier in my seat.
Yeah, grounded.
I'm grounded.
Yeah. That's my body skin.
I say I feel heavier in my seat. Yeah. It's called grounded, people.
Yeah.
Dr. Sylvia says in a more eloquent way. I'm like, I feel heavier.
But you know what? I think it's such a great way to say it because for many of us who disassociate, and that's one of so many of our coping skills, especially if you experience trauma, you're not even in your body. So if you can actually feel there's a certain heaviness in your body, that's a huge milestone for many of us who don't spend any time in our body because we're up here.
All the way up there.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of something lighter, the title. Was this the original title?
Yes.
How did this come about? Because it's amazing.
Thank you. So I was her name is Rochelle Fretz, and she's a New Yorker. Yes. So lovely. I was in her book proposal course, and I wanted to write a book called Hey Ugly. And ugly was an acronym for you gotta love yourself. Okay. And it was all about how self-talk affects us. And when I mentioned the title to the group, everyone just kind of was like, I'm like, guys, isn't that an amazing title? They're like, what? And so I was open to the feedback. And in that moment I said, well, if there was something else I could write about, what would it be? And it just came to me, loneliness. So, but what would I name it? And it just automatically, Lonely AF. And Rochelle said, yes, I got the spider. My spidey sense. She got the goosebumps. And it's just always stuck.
I love it.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh. Even if you don't even know what the book is about, you're like,
Yes. Yes. Wait, can I share just a quick story?
100%.
So for my birthday, my dear friend Elizabeth Alford, who's also an author, she got me this little lipstick container that has, I guess holder, has a little mirror and you can engrave something. Mm-hmm. So I opened it up. She gave it to me last week and she wrote, "Loved AF." And I just had this moment. I was like, you get it. You know me. And I think that's what this book is about. It's from, starting in that place of feeling lonely and recognizing these self-limiting beliefs, maybe recognizing parts of yourself that you've invalidated, split off, shamed, whatever it is. And when you go through this heart method and you honor your emotions, you explore your family patterns, you acknowledge the pain points, you rewrite your narrative, you turn within. I think it shifts lonely AF to loved AF. Mm-hmm. But from not like this emotional part, but it's self-love through small actions, taking a moment to read a page, taking a moment to acknowledge the pain point, taking a moment to give a name for the feeling, taking a moment to ask, what's my preferred story? Taking a moment to notice 3 colors or 3 sounds. That's love in action. And I think when I read that, engraving, I went, that's what I've experienced through writing this book. And that's my wish for everyone is to feel loved AF when they do the deeper work. And it's difficult sometimes. It can feel really overwhelming and it's not meant to do all at once. But just starting the journey with one tiny step, one page, one exercise. My wish for you is to feel loved AF.
It is so beautiful. Well, my wish is for everyone to go and buy your book, Lonely AF, A Therapist's No BS Guide to Feeling Less Alone.
Thank you.
You are a gem, honestly. I wish everyone could feel your energy sitting next to you right now, that everyone that's listening. This book is beautiful. No matter if you're on your first step or your millionth step, you will feel seen. You will feel connected, not only to the book and you, but also the reader themselves. I enjoyed it so much. And it's one of those books that you leave in the front of your shelf because you're just going to keep going back to it.
Yeah, thank you. I just also want to take a moment to thank you for putting into words so much of what I didn't even realize I had experienced in my relationship with my father. And my father's not all bad, right? Like not all narcissists are all bad. There are parts of him that I'm extremely grateful for, but there are also behaviors that really hurt, but I didn't have a language for it. And so when I've seen your content on Instagram and when I have read what you've been able to put into words, I have felt seen. I have felt recognized. I have felt less alone. I mean it. And I see it. I'm like, wow, she has a way of putting into words what I'm guessing many of us have experienced, but we didn't feel safe enough to talk about it. So thank you, because you have been a big part of my healing.
Wow, that is a huge compliment.
Yes.
Thank you so much. I don't even really know what to say.
I mean it. Yes.
Well, thank you so much. I know where to find you. Where can everyone find you?
Yes. Okay. So on Instagram, it's at Dr. Sylvia K. So DrSylvia, the letter K. I have a website, drsylviak.com. I also have a podcast, the Dr. Sylvia K Show. And I do have a Substack, but I'm not so consistent with it. Same Dr. Sylvia K. And that's where you can find me for now.
Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Cari. It's really a gift to be here and I can't wait to read your book. And I'm just so grateful for not only the content that you're creating, but for the connections that you're making worldwide.
Ditto. I'm so grateful for everything that you're doing and giving this space for all of us that we need.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for joining me for this week's episode of Surviving Roots. I hope it gave you something meaningful to carry with you. Let's keep this conversation going. Find me on Instagram at cari.fund, where I'll share more from the show. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with someone who needs it. And remember, we are the choices that we make.